and welcome to Who Does Rolls. I am your host, Mike B, and here we are doing something a little different in so much as far as it's another list, so it's not different. However, I am calling this the board games that made me. It is not based on the stupid Netflix shows, but I actually am basing it on a podcast, which was the movies that made me, which has got Joe Dante on it, if you don't know him, who directed Gremlins, Inner Space, and a host of other very cool things, including Piranha, which I'm going to throw in there. Anyway, they have a guest on, and they go through 10 of their favourite movies, and you know what were kind of defining moments in their cinematic journey. I'm going to do a board game equivalent of that, which is going to touch on mostly stuff predating the 2000s. Kind of my preamble, my introduction, my start, my prequel to where I am now. Really, that's what it will be. So there you go. We're going to swirl ourselves back many decades to the 1980s, where I was but a wee lad with ne'er an idea of what was going on or going to come in the great big wide world of board games. However, my dad, God bless him, had gone a couple of years running, I think. He'd been going to London to the Modelers Engineers exhibition, and I remember the moment, the lightning in the bottle moment, was his return of one of these, first or second time he'd been up there, and he brought back some very early metal miniatures. There was some Raoul Pavara stuff, I think they were called. But yeah, I remember this, and I've got it somewhere, and I was trying to root it out the other day. It's this kind of dude looking like a bit of a sorcerer type thing, crossed with a Jawa and some other bits and pieces. So we picked them up, and that was kind of, I remember me and my brother having one each and scratching our names in the bottom and painting it with like the free enamel paints that he had available. And he went up subsequent year and bought back a couple more, and that was kind of that was it. I had the bug. I since that point went up there a couple of years later. He took me and my brother up there somewhere about 1982-83, which would have been Modelers Engineers exhibition, the big event. It was kind of a cross between wargamers crossed with model enthusiasts, a weird combination, certainly. I was taken up there with the pretense that I wanted to find some more of this stuff, this metal figure bling and whatever else the delights it had, and there was the promise of Daleks and giant robots and maybe other stuff, but I was going for that stuff, and it fell just after Christmas, so I had my Christmas money, so it was all coming up fucking roses, and so we did. And back in these bygone guys of the 80s, me and my brother had just left to roam the halls of, I think it may be an Ali Pali or somewhere else like that, Wembley Conference Centre maybe even, just mooching around on our own amongst this wonderland of stuff, and that first purchase I would have made that year would have been 1982ish, and it was a real gamble, because it was a tie-up between Judge Dredd the board game by Ian Livingstone, Judge Dredd 2008 being one of my most favourite things at that point in time, or I think I vaguely remember them having Dark Crystal, those the Skeksis, and it was those molds, plaster Paris molds you put in and you could make characters, and it was a Dark Crystal set, which also was like, but the lure of Judge Dredd was too much, so I went for Judge Dredd, and that was the commencement of this journey that we are now finding ourselves on. JD, the board game, brilliant stuff. I say that because we're no old friends. We've been around a while. You in Mega City as a judge, arresting perps. And it was randomised that you could have Judge Death being arrested for littering. You basically run around trying to catch these guys, either fight them, kill them, or whatever. Lots to take that stuff. It was good fun. It's being reprinted by Rebellion Unplugged in the next year or so. I still have the original version up there on the shelf. I will cut to another cutaway of me going, look at me with the original version. So anyway, Judge Dredd sent me on the road, and more was to follow. I went up subsequently every year to the next couple of years to the Model Engineers exhibition. I picked up Chainsaw Warrior at the same event, which was Games Workshop again. It was a solo game of you, kind of like John Carpenter's Escape from New York, crossed with a comic book as a solo ball game, and good fun. There's an app of it I think you can pick up. I always wanted the sequel they promised at the back of the rulebook, and it never came to pass. An impossible game to beat by any means, but aesthetically it's got the Bret Ewan's art in it. It's kind of felt very 2000 AD, even though it wasn't. and it was a good fun, a good rollicking ride. I remember spending many a happy time sat at home on my own trying to beat that and getting my ass handed to me repeatedly. Then would have been something around that time, would have been June. I would have crossed my path, the original TSR June. Martin, or now Mel, my buddy at the time, and still good buddy, had it, and we played it, I think, quite a few times single player. Two player, we were playing it. Which is not how to play Dune, but I love the aesthetics of it. I was, at that point in time, enmeshed into the David Lynch movie. I'd not read the Herbert books, I don't think, at that point, but this pretty much led me to that, and just becoming more obsessed with that. And so that Dune, probably mid-80s, maybe sometime around then, and we played that a lot, and I fortunately own it now, this many decades later, when it was reprinted by GF9. And if you don't own it and can get a good, at least minimum 4, but probably 6 people of like-minded disposition around, give Dune a whirl, because it's all right. Then HeroQuest would have fallen on my doorstep around about now, and I did enjoy HeroQuest, and I've subsequently revisited HeroQuest, and it's nostalgia is a great thing. At the time, we enjoyed it a lot. I remember us getting the expansions for it. There was a bunch of us around. My brother, I think, was still playing with us at that point in time. And we played HeroQuest, because who the fuck wouldn't be playing HeroQuest? And that toy value of that original base set in the 80s with the furniture and all the miniatures was just astounding. Came from Games Workshop, tied up with MB, I think it was. It is there. I'm looking at it now. It has been subsequently reprinted for much, much more money than that was originally worth. About the same as what it is worth now. But yeah, it wasn't as good, I don't think. I don't know. They didn't do anything with it. They just basically reprinted it, which seems a strange choice, because it's not that great. But nostalgia-wise, brilliant. Then I would have picked up The Awful Green Things About Space from Steve Jackson Games. It's a 2-player game. If one of you is the beleaguered crew on a spaceship where the aliens are loose on it, very cartoony, very comic book. What I did love about it, a mechanism it had in it, was that when you attacked the creatures for the first time with a weapon or piece of equipment, there would be a random mutation effect. They would do something. It might kill them. It might make them split into 2. It might make them lay an egg. It might make them do other stuff. So you had this battle going on board the ship of you trying to take these aliens out, and all this mutagen type shit happening. Fun, silly, stupid. I remember the end of the game was in a choose your own adventure thing. You could escape in a life raft and do a choose your own adventure type book thing. After that, all good fun. I enjoyed all that immensely. Really good. Awful Green Things from Outer Space. It has also subsequently been repeated many times. Space Hulk would have been hit my world about then. Space Hulk is Games Workshop's kind of Aliens, the board game. It was you in a bunch of Marines in Terminator armor with these big giant tin cans of indestructible killing machines with the Tyranids, these gene stealers, pouring from everywhere at you, just charging, hundreds streaming at you, and you holding your ground and firing away your bolt guns. I loved it. It had an Overwatch mechanism you could put on, so you'd be there ready to go into effect when it happened. And I played that countless times. Really good game. Always wanted to pick it back up because I never know what happened to my original version of Space Hulk. I lent it to someone, never saw it again. But Games Workshop are fucking idiots, and they just don't just put it out to print. They keep randomly doing very limited runs of it, which is stupid. But I did enjoy Space Hulk, and I did enjoy it. I think the Commodore 64 games of it and some other bits that came out were also kind of really good fun. But Space Hulk, what good fun that was, and enjoyed that immensely. That kind of put me down a deep well of Games Workshop. It would have been 40k Rogue Trader. I did a lot of 40k battling. Epic Scale stuff was also there. Played a lot of that. Obviously, all the variations on that Games Workshop stuff, and it led me down the Games Workshop rabbit hole, which takes me to my next thing on the list, which led me to Dark Future. From designer, the sad late designer Richard Halliwell, did Blood Mania as well for the 2000 AD license, but Dark Future was Mad Max the 4 game. You guys, you had little cars about matchbox size, and I know people kind of did their own versions of it. You could adapt these cars, and you essentially were fighting on the roads. But the thing about it was the physics and all the mechanism, everything about the physics of driving was in that rulebook, and it worked, and it was astounding. But the rulebook was about that thick. It took about 3 months to learn it, and then you play it and go, that was a fucking amazing. That was just like racing a car really high speed and fighting. Wah! And then you put it away, and then you'd open it up in a week or two's time and go, shit, I don't remember how to play this. There's all of these rules. So I never played it as much as I maybe should have done. I played it quite a lot. It is up there. I will dig it out. I dug it out a few years ago, and I thought, you know what, fuck, I'll play this. I haven't played this for ages. And then went, fuck! And didn't. But maybe it'd be something to dig out and have a crack at, because I remember it being fucking brilliant. Dark Future for Games Workshop. Then that would have led to Space Fleet, which was Games Workshop again. It was their kind of interstellar spaceship battle thing. It had a cool thing. You had the box lid that you threw the dice in for the attacks. And I remember having tons of that and playing that with Mel and really enjoying it. It was good fun, and I love stuff like Twilight Imperium, which came later, of course. Definitely was a lead into that. Obviously, we had other stuff, space battle stuff, and Star Wars Rebellion is another thing I think of. All good things, but yes, that was Space Fleet. I really enjoyed Space Fleet for a brief period of time when I played it quite a bit. Then that leads to Aliens, the board game. From Leading Edge, probably in the mid-90s. A cracking game. It basically simulates Aliens, the movie, as a board game thing, and it's the first real. And I played it, and you could play it solo, and I did play it solo. I think you could also play with other players in there and against people. But the AI was really good on the Aliens, and it did just follow the plot line of the movie Aliens. There was an expansion for it, which I remember owning, and the miniatures that I picked up as well. It was brilliant. Fantastic gameplay wise, just simple but worked really well. They had some really good mechanisms of the aliens and the AI on that. Fantastic. I would sit many happy times, sit there reenacting my own alternate fan fiction version of Aliens, and always trying to make sure Hudson survived. Loved it, sold it when Sun Number 1 was on the doorstep, because we needed cots and money and stuff, along with a lot of this stuff on here went at the same time. All of my 40k stuff. Sadly, probably for much less than I should do and could have got for it now. And that's one I always lament. But shit happens. I do have Gale Forces 9's Aliens Another Day in the core. It's all right. It gives me a little bit of that feel, but it's just mechanically more busy and complicated than it needs to be, when I remember that version being so lean and fun. But I will make the effort and play a bit more of that, and especially as I think that's kind of got a little bit out of print of late. And finally, the big one that leads me is the step in to where we find ourselves where I am now, which is Diplomacy, the board game. Diplomacy, if you don't know, is Risk Plus. We played a lot of Risk at this point in time before really we delved deeply into board games, the modern board games. So a lot of Risk was played, Risk Lord of the Rings. Diplomacy was one that I'd owned for a few years and played a couple of times, but not for some time. And I vaguely remember playing it back then in the 90s. Dug it all back up, and we played that. And Risk. So what Diplomacy is a game of betrayal and shit. It's a war game, kind of Risk-ish, but more advanced. You have to plot your orders. You actually write your orders down on a piece of paper every round, and you have this whole discussion stage, and people have alliances, and they're discussing, and you can ferry troops across water using your ships if you write the right orders, and you would plot all this grand thing out, and it all kind of plays out on this board, and it goes on for hours. And we played it a lot until a fateful night when I was in an alliance with Bob, and I basically betrayed him. I remember leaving all his troops stranded, not supporting what I said I would, and he was wiped out. I took his capital and I ha-ha-ha'd and did lots of stuff, and Bob nearly flipped the table. And we have never, ever played a game of Diplomacy again. And this is often brought up, regular intervals in the subsequent decades. What a double-crossing, dirty rat bastard I am. What can you do? So there you are. There is a whistle-stop tour through 10 board games that defined my board game DNA. All of that stuff is seeped in there, and it's still there now, and it definitely defines choices I've made in the board game world, and a lot of it, as you can see, steers me down the Ameritrash path. Love a bit of board games. Love a bit of old board games. I fortunately still hold a few of them. Do you have... What's your board game DNA? What's your favourite old crusty board games? I ask you this now, because I do. Thanks for tuning in. I've been Mate B. This has been another rambling list of stuff that you may have enjoyed or gone. Who knows? It was quick, it was fast, it was easy, it was lovely. It was a nice trip down memory lane. I loved it. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing and all that, liking, subscribing and all that. Yeah, Patreon, shit, bitch. Yeah, goodbye. Words. Leaving.